non-profit organizations. Administrators in the state of California were really, really helpful, and even though the paperwork took a long time to push through, because California is a very administrative-heavy state, we got our California corporation and nonprofit status relatively easily. And so the next logical step after becoming a corporation was applying for 501c3 status, which, for those of you who don't know, is the part of the Internal Revenue Code that basically makes nonprofits nonprofits. When you see other nonprofits going out there and saying this, when you make a donation to us, we're a 501c3 organization, you can write it off on your taxes. That is really, really big. I know almost every project that's out there has a PayPal donation button, and a lot of them came to us saying, they ask us, are you a 501c3? Can we write this off on our taxes? And of course, they didn't know what a 501c3 was. Well, no, you're just giving to our project because we need the money. And when corporations hear that, they say, we love your code. It's fantastic that it's open source and we're using it in our organization, but I can't really convince the CFO to give you any money. Sorry. And it ended right there. And so people are saying, how do we go about getting this? I don't know anything about the law. I went to an attorney. I can't afford to pay him, $250 an hour to start me up and to get everything going on this. And so that's when Jesse and I said, we really have to do this. We have to go out and get this status for the community. So after we became a California corporation, I flew out to Vermont. Jesse and I, we went through the big pile of IRS paperwork, the big application form that asks a lot of technical questions, that asks a lot of financial related questions. And the federal government, if they're going to give an organization the ability to write off donations to it on people's taxes, they need to collect a lot of information. And we didn't really know at the time what we were doing. When we originally applied to the IRS, we said, well, we want to act as an umbrella organization to the open source community. We filled out all the requisite paperwork, sent it in, and waited. And waited and waited and waited and waited. I think it was 6 or 7 months. And then we get this. It was almost a year? Yeah, it was almost a year. And then we get a nice long letter back from a revenue officer in California, which basically said, what the fuck? What is this? What is open source? What do you mean? You're going to give hackers money? What's going on here? Which is essentially what we were trying to do. And we spent... And they sent us and they asked a lot of very specific, a lot of technical questions about what exactly it was that we were trying to do. Were we working with any other 501c3 organizations? And just one point, if you walk away with nothing else, it's much, much easier to get 501c3 status when you've already been working with or under an organization that has that status. That many, many, many organizations will split off. And it's much easier to get that status when you say, well, I've been working with the Hacker Foundation, their EIN is this, and 2 of the board members that we're planning on also sit on the board of the Hacker Foundation. When the IRS reads that, they say, okay, you're good to go. I mean, I've seen it just in seeing how audits are performed with a lot of my clients. If they have all the documentation there and it looks organized and it looks professional, the revenue officer will just sit there, go flip, 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 look at a page, see if it's right, and they say, okay, fine, you're good. Because, they work for the federal government. They don't have the time to sit there and go through different things. But when you go into an appointment with the IRS and you don't have your paperwork and you don't have everything organized and you can't justify everything that you put on your tax return, that's when things get bad. So we had this letter from the IRS, and we had to go through yet another soul-searching process, answering all of the very specific questions. Well, tell me about this project that we had that was a theoretical project. About getting the open source community that was involved in robotics, interested and organized and collaborated around the idea of robotics and devices that would detect and defuse landmines. It was a really great idea. The IRS really liked it, but the way that we had originally couched it was too simple. They wanted more documentation. They wanted to say, well, what specifically are you doing here? What's the exempt purpose that's being served by this project? Another project that we said we wanted to try to get people to donate hardware. Companies have a very short life cycle for a lot of their technology. It's 2 or 3 years, even though that technology may have a 5 or 6 year applicable life. Well, first of all, as I'm going through this, am I losing anybody with the terminology that I'm using? You guys, you're still following along pretty well? Because I can sometimes go off and talk about things and not explain them very well. And if I do, just please stop me and there'll be a question and answer period after this. And they said, well, you know, there are a lot of companies that are out there collecting computers and giving them away to poor people, giving them away to schools. Why do you want to give them away to hackers? And so we actually had to explain that there are development projects that are in play out there in the field, and that a lot of the open source community relies on donated hardware to do these things. And it's very difficult for an independent researcher or independent research group that's not a 501c3 organization, that's not otherwise organized or not working through a university or another grant funding agency to get that. But a lot of times it's, you know, techies who hang out with those people who, you know, see things that are meant to be recycled in the closet and just take it out, dispose of it, and hand it off personally, sort of under the table to a lot of these groups. And so we said, you know, we want to try to put a stop to that, and we want to try to make it so that people who are out there don't have to rely on friends that are already working for companies, or to try to go out there and, you know, build these networks just to get the equipment that they need to do what they do. And so after we put all this through, you know, we spent a long time in this letter. We had it reviewed by Jennifer Granick, who sits on our board and is our legal affairs counselor. And she said, you know, this looks good. I'm sure the IRS is going to like it. I read more case law on nonprofit things because I was just starting to get into accountancy at this point. We sent it in, just sort of held our fingers, and 2 months later, they came back and said, boom, you're a 501c3 organization. That's it. And we were really, really excited. All right, now we're this organization. Now we're really, you know, going to get out there. We're going to change how the community does everything. Everybody's going to go legit. It's going to be wonderful. And then we went back to all the different people that we said, and he said, oh, we're a 501c3 organization. They're like, okay, great, give me money. I was like, no, that's not the point. We don't have money. We're here to help you, you know, go out there and get money. They're like, oh, so give me money. and that's what the Hacker Foundation has been trying to do since getting our 501c3 status. That a lot of our fundraisers are just, you know, small little things that we pull off at hacker conferences like this. That going out there and actually getting money is a difficult thing. Now, a bunch of projects, we've been talking with various different projects that are out there and involved, and going back to a lot of the people who said, you need to start this, and told them, well, okay, we've started this. We're here. Now, you know, because we're a 501c3 organization, we have a specific obligation to the federal government and to the state of California to prove that, you know, you're doing things that serve an exempt purpose, and that we have to get you to document what you're doing. Oh, document papers like, oh no, I was supposed to release version 2.0, you know, 3 months ago, and people are waiting for it. I'm going to go back and work on code, and, you know, oh, go get me money, go buy. So, you know, where are we left at that? But lately, as we've been talking to more and more people, I don't think I can fully disclose what projects that we've been working for right now, but we are actually in the process of helping bring certain coding projects into the Hacker Foundation. And now is a very, very good time, I think, to get in on that. If you have a research project or you're involved in some things, Jesse and I are going to be here today, we're going to be here tomorrow. Come talk to us and ask us about a lot of these different things. You know, we have an application process, and the only reason that we have this application, we're asking the bare minimum things that we need to prove to the federal government that you are serving an exempt research purpose. That when you go back and you're thinking about, well, you know, what's an exempt research purpose? How do I do that? You're basically trying to document for us so that we have the documentation in case the federal government asks us about it, saying that, you know, what I'm doing, the code that I'm producing, the robotics work that I'm doing, the other projects that I have, I'm doing for a charitable purpose. You know, I'm not doing this to make money. I'm not doing this, you know, to be aggrandizing. I'm not doing this because I'm a terrorist. You know, I'm doing it because I'm very interested in doing it. I'm interested in pursuing and enhancing the science behind the field. And I'm not doing it because I want to get a patent on what I'm doing. I'm doing it for the community. Because I know that there's somebody else out there, you know, on the other side of the country, on the other side of the planet, that's going to take the work that I'm doing and make it better. And that I'm probably going to see what he's been doing and have more ideas on how to make his work better. And what I see a lot of people doing is spending a lot of their own wage income on a lot of these things. You know, some people might have side businesses or side hobbies, and to write off a lot of those things on your taxes, you actually have to have a profit purpose. You know, independent researchers that are not working for a grant funding organization, for a university, can't write off the cost of their equipment. They can't depreciate it. They can't write off the cost of their supplies. They can't write off the cost of their labor. They can't do a lot of these things, so they're spending just up to times 50, 60% of their income pursuing these research projects. And going back to the 18, 19-year-old kids that are in college or people who are working together, when they start getting married, when they start having families and they start looking to buy houses, even though they still have an interest in those research projects, they simply can't pursue them because they don't have the income. The wife says, we have to pay the light bill, we have to pay the phone bill, quit buying computers. And if anybody who's been in a relationship like that, when your significant other says, we got to pay these bills, stop buying computers, you generally have a choice. You either have to stop buying computers or break up or get divorced with whoever you're with. That's just how it goes. What we want to do is we want to make it so that everybody here who's involved with the project for a charitable purpose can start using a lot of the laws and a lot of the regulations that are out there to be able to offset a lot of that cost. When you're working with a 501c3 organization and you buy assets, when you use supplies, when you go to conferences and spend money to perfect and go forward with that charitable aspect under the law as it exists now, you have the right to write those expenses off against your taxable income and lower your regular tax bill. And that if you end up, and especially now after Katrina and the laws about that, you can write off much more of these things that you're using to buy and to spend, that you're spending on charitable projects against your taxes. That they've opened up many more regulations, even since Jesse and I started the organization, that allow you to write off a lot more of that on your taxes if you're pursuing it for a charitable purpose. And that's what the Hacker Foundation is here to do. That all you have to do, we've already done all the legal aspects of it, we're well versed in the tax aspects of it. We're here to help you do the research that you're doing and to help you reap the full benefits that are afforded to you under federal law for those different things. Another thing that I mentioned earlier is grant funding. A lot of people out there are sort of plugged in at the edge and at the fray of the academic research community. And at that edge, there's a lot of grant funding out there. There are a lot of people who have a lot of money that are interested in seeing the open source community bloom and develop. But because they work for organizations and they're 501, they fall under some chapter of 501, either educational, 501c(b) or 501c(d). I think it is, don't quote me on that. They want to give away money to people in the open source community, but they can't give away that money to individuals. They can't just write you a blank check. Sometimes grant people will be able to say, okay, we can give you this piece of equipment, but you have to write us every 3 months to say that this piece of equipment is still here just in case we need to go back and get it. And if hackers can't balance their checkbook, if they have a hard time just getting through the daily grind, the basic economics that it takes for people to go about their daily lives, are they going to remember to write a letter every 3 months? Are they going to get just being wrapped up in their project and being divided by so many other things going on in their life, are they going to be able to do a lot of those administrative things? And we found that no, that it's too high of a burden to do that. That's another thing that the Hacker Foundation does. We're here specifically to allow you to go apply for grant funding as individual researchers, as small research groups. And we're here to offset a lot of that administrative burden for you. That as long as you're still pursuing code, as long as you're still pursuing robotics or other electronic projects that are out there for a charitable purpose, we will be here to help you do all the bookkeeping, do all the due diligence, to act as sort of an intermediary between the grant funding organization and you, to make sure that you're fulfilling all of the requisite diligence requirements of the grant organization, but at the same time have as much possible free time as you have to pursue the project and the reason that you're getting the grant funding in the first place. Going back to my first point, another thing that I was really involved in, I wanted to let the Hacker Foundation do, is act as sort of a PR agency. There are a lot of different people out there that claim to speak for hackers and say, well, I represent the hacker community, I am all this. And I've always found a lot of those people, after a while, they get to be incredibly fake. And they get to be incredibly wrapped up with their own power, and they say, oh, instead of saying, I'm plugged into the hacker community, I represent the hacker community, they go from, actually talking with people and seeing what's going on out there, and saying, okay, well, great, this is what I'm going to tell people. And they get wrapped up in their own ethos and they say, well, I am the hacker community. Whatever I think and whatever I say goes. A good example of this was ESR, right around the time that we went off